I'll just put out a couple thoughts here we can play with them. I was thinking today's topic is, who am I? And there's several takes on that question. As a young adult, we often hear that search for, who am I? And then there's a more interior look with that when we say, who am I? Where I see the various parts within me, and I'm trying to decide which to choose, or how to choose, or whatever. So it's a multi-layer question that still comes up after 70 years. So, but rather than describing it, I just want to point out one angle, and then we'll play from there. In our chatting, I've often said, just be a decent human being. Don't be a dickhead. And Stefan, of course, immediately says, well, what's a decent human being? Because everybody has a different opinion. So a thought came on that recently. In terms of mindfulness, there is an answer to that. And the key identifier of our awake self, the decent human being, is it cares equally for all others as it does for itself. So if I can locate in me that part of the swirl of stuff that I am inside, that's my awake being, or at least the entryway to it, and it is my real self, and that is always a decent human being. The animal self that we talk about can be programmed any which way. It can be a serial killer, and I can still find the decent human being in me and start living from that. Or it may be the nice old grandma that's just sweet to everybody. It's still the animal aspect versus the deeper interior self. So if we ask the question, who am I? What we're really looking at is, do I know who I am as true being, the decent human being of, in Christian terms, of Christ, in Buddhist terms, of Buddha, and such? Do I know who I am as that? And then, can I look into my personality, the animal self, and see that there's probably at least a dozen, maybe a lot more characters in there. You know, like hearing you talking this morning, sometimes we want to sit and chat. Other times I want to go sit in my room for 3 weeks and not have anybody talk to me. Sometimes I want to go out and get things done outside. Sometimes I want to clean the house. I mean, the thing is, as we become more aware, we see all these like parts of us floating in us. And that goes back to the question that the young adult asked, that's trying to figure out, well, who am I? And if they can learn to see then that you are none of those things, yet you are all of them. But to pick one and say, I am this, is painful, and it will not work, because eventually, no matter how disciplined and focused you are, the other aspects of your animal will gain more and more strength, saying, I want my turn to express. So then we're back to the basics. Okay, so my personality, my animal self, it's made up of all these parts. I don't know who put them there. I didn't pick some of those, I'm sure, but there they are. And that's where I call in my higher sense of awareness, my true self, and say, help me sort this. And instead of judging any of those floating parts of me in the personality, I just say, all right, here's this part. It wants to do whatever. And, that might get me in jail, or that might ruin my relationship, or, I mean, if we sense something about it we think is not going to be totally in our best interest, we ask our true self, help me, let this be transformed. So, to try to sum that up, if we can realize there are so many different parts in our personality. Some of them are totally contradictory. I'm a scientist, I believe in evolution. Oh, but I'd also believe in spiritual stuff. And, you know, where's that silly story of the Garden of Eden fit in with my science? It's like, it's okay that there will always be all these parts. But the trick is to just recognize that's a part that's coming up for performance now. It's on stage for the moment. Okay, true self, you run this performance, rather than letting the part take over and I become that. I am angry now. I am happy now. I'm going to forget about everything in the world and not put gas in the car because I don't feel like being worldly today. I mean, always that tiny practice of immediately, here's a thought, here's an urge, let me go to my true self. Okay, now I'm going to live it from my decent human being. And again, the key, when I know when I've got back there, is when I wish well for every other person or thing the same as I wish well for myself. Humility is recognizing I'm the same, greater or lesser, better or worse, as everybody else. It's not putting ourselves down to be lesser. It's accepting the equality of creation. So that's an introduction to whatever thoughts come from here. Let's play.
Immediately, thoughts that came up recently for me that I think you addressed. I'm going to the kindness in all of us that wants the same for everybody else that we want for ourselves. Stefan was talking last night about a book, Care of the Soul, and in that book he was trying to explain that soul wasn't a religious or a spiritual thing in that sense, but it was, he used the word depth, and that was the word that stuck with me. And so in my experience, that keeps deepening. So there's our true self, so to speak, but then that goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It's just like a well with no bottom, and it just, and so so even if we find our true self and we find that kindness within ourselves, it can always grow.
Yeah.
It can always be more. And the other comment on from a slightly different thing is, well, actually, let's see if I can tie these two together. The depth that Stefan was talking about based on that book. Also, he talked about being able to feel things, caring about others, caring about what goes on in the world, and feeling it deeply. So come back, and we have these kitties outside. And there are different ways we look at things. But I guess what I want to say is, I think everybody here has this desire to be kind to those kitties.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we each, for reasons of our own experience, background, programming, call it whatever, have different ideas of what that kindness means, how that gets manifested and played out. And so that's just another aspect
Mhm.
I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Something to play with.
Yeah, I think the mindfulness overview that I've been using here in general fits that book he was talking about,
Right.
Care of the Soul, where you're tuning in, but then you're caring for all of ourselves, including the personality and the animal. You're kind to yourself. Even if you see something, I really like that transformed, it's done with a love, not with a hatred of ourselves.
Mhm.
You know, and I think that's how we grow in sensing all the parts of us, being aware of them, as he might say, you know, and feeling them. Yes, I feel this energy in me. Well, if we here, being in a divine-oriented application of mindfulness, if we believe there's a creator that created all this, it created energy in a life form, there has to be a way that can be expressed well or good. And it's merely up to me to ask it to show me what's the good use of this energy coming up, instead of damning creation and the creator by saying, oh, there's something wrong with me, I'm a horrible person. No, it's just a very ugly feeling energy. How do I ask to have it transformed to a useful co-creative energy, say? So to me, that's how I see this growing awareness of our souls. All of it's not a separate part up here and
Yeah.
that's only available when I'm alone in my room, you know.
Well, thank you, Tim and Bob, for talking about this today, because it's something that's really central to my spirituality. I love the idea of the spirituality of the divine presence of Jesus in every soul, and within that, that's the truest sense of ourselves. That is the self of everybody.
Mhm.
And it kind of exists, in this oneness that we are all that
Mhm.
self collectively and uniquely, which is fascinating. But as we sort of dive down, we kind of sort of self-identify with maybe things that is not this self. So then we're actually not this self. Like, take myself for example, I am not 42 years old. I am not a female.
Mhm.
I am not British.
Mhm.
I am not several things, but they are attached to
Mhm.
me, and it's some sort of self-identification that actually separates me
Yeah.
from this oneness that I truly am, and you truly are, and you
Right.
truly are. So we kind of live in this world of separation, and we sort of suffer in that, but in a weird way, the suffering's not real, and I don't know my point here, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But it's just always a joy just talking about it and trying to just get different fruit from it and
Yeah, but
reveling
you've
in
got a point there you're not saying yet. See if you can find it.
I've gone off on. I've stopped. Well, so, sorry. The main point is that we are all one, and we do have this oneness all the time. We sort of mistakenly identify ourselves as something that we are not. But then I have to say, I did much prefer the way you put it and your take on it, your approach from it, is that it's still part of me and it's something that comes up and fades away. And so I shouldn't sort of say, well, that's not myself and just leave it, because then that's further separation, maybe. So you kind of have to then incorporate all the things that you are not, even though that you're not, because really you are, because you're all.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
I'll use the example again. Just a silly little idea, but it really works for me to get those two in the right order.
Right.
You say we are all the divine life in the oneness.
Yeah.
Okay? So the divine life created this amazing creation, like a work of art, a playground.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, I'm going to go inside my playground and play. And I've made these little characters, like video characters in a game. Only here, that's us. It's got personalities. It's got all kinds of strange biological things to keep the character intact while it's here. So who am I as the divine, my true self, operating this character, having this adventure? So now I'm not battling this character. It's one I chose to come into, to create and come into. And let me see how I can bring more of the divine awareness into it without judging it or battling it. And now I don't have to be separate. I can be right in. Oh yeah, I feel good today. And here comes some anger. Okay, we're going to work with anger today. Look at this. What's that energy you want to do? Because I'm playing with the character, not separate. It is because our awareness can see that the character is a character. That's where you said, I see it comes, I see it go. That's the awareness as, but we can learn to just leave the character here. It's all in and out, through me and around me. And yet be aware of my true nature at the same time. And that's, I believe, my feeling, is where we heal that separation. By not rejecting the character or demeaning it. It's simply very limited in what it can be and do. But it's part of the divine dance of the creation it made. So who am I to object to it?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Certainly in my own spiritual life, I got to like a block where I was trying not to identify with those that I'm not. But then it literally got me nowhere, because I was still, I'm still in the world. I'm still relative to time. So I'm still 42 years old, even though, again, the true self isn't an age. But I think there's sort of spiritual advancement and evolvement of actually saying, I am this. Is that right?
What do you mean by I am this? What's the this?
I am everything in my personality that comes up and falls.
Yeah. And that's because we're always, except in our deepest moments of communion, we are always coming from our personality self back to fuller awareness of our divine self. So yes, at any given moment, I am this. So what's Tim need to do today? A little help? And okay, I am this. got this body, some days good, some days funky, got this brain, and these feelings, and these urges, and likes. Yeah, I know you're getting it right. Don't worry about the words too much. We do have to surrender and say, yes, this is what I am right now. I am this. Okay. So what do I do with this, rather than saying, oh no, I'm this cloud space, and we'll just let that fall over dead and rot. Yeah.
And it's something within that space of ourselves, we can truly just accept that of others, and maybe sort of come into some element of forgiveness of sin, of just not judging, because we don't judge ourselves. We just go, this is who I am.
Exactly.
And from that, we can give it outwards.
I think that's the key, in fact. It's the only pure place that we can truly forgive, because forgiveness is just releasing my judgment, my grievance about them being. And it's only when I can look at myself and say, yep, that's what I am. That's what you are. And now it's just with divine awareness. And I still love the example with the Apostle Paul. I mean, here's this guy, he was actually a murderer doing his job. And when Jesus whacks him, he doesn't go on about all that. He doesn't say you should quit murdering, you should feel bad, you should repent. He says, hey dude, look at all this energy you got. How about I give you a better use for it? Okay, now get up and get going. I mean, there was no judgment laid on him. You know, he just asked, why are you doing this? But I believe that's the space you're talking about. And yeah, it's sweet when we can get there and just think, oh, what a character.
Yeah. I was going to say the divine knows no death. So that's not an issue.
No.
I thought it was interesting the first time you described that you were with your things. You're 42 years old, you're British, blah, blah, blah. Because you said, I am not these things, but they are attached to me. And I thought that was interesting, because what happens that blocks, I think, most people, especially in their earlier years, is that we become attached to who we think we are. So, but you had it turned around right away. So I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, is this sort of teaching the sort of spirituality sort of connected to Course in Miracles? Would that be a good book to?
I followed it for 25 years. I can't say in general, but for me, it's actually what developed my awareness of mindfulness, and really saw what mindfulness meant through the teachings and practices in the Course. So I'm very much in favor of it. For a lot of people, it's too far out. This world is not real. It just freaks people out. I've had them walk out of group. You know, that's stupid. I stubbed my toe this morning. Don't tell me this world isn't real. But yeah, I still use it a lot in my mind. I mean, I am so saturated with its teachings from doing groups with it for so long. But now they're just pointers to remind me, like, oh yeah, go there. Remember to ask for help. Remember who you really are. Yeah, you're the beloved of God with this crazy character that follows you around everywhere. You know? Yeah. So personally, I like it. Yeah.
There was something else I noticed as we're talking. There's a lot of direction in it. in the sense of behind, in front of, under, those kinds of, it's our limited material character here, body, that thinks that way. And from the divine perspective, it's all here, just here. And I'm wondering if it's just a way to kind of reconcile those two and bring them a little bit closer to make the transition or transformation or whatever into the truest version of who we are. A little bit easier.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because I think I even pointed, I said, awareness is here.
Yeah.
And, and then but then that in itself is separation from the all now. So,
yeah. And the guy that stubbed his toe, because he's thinking from the nerve cells in his foot.
Mm-hmm.
He's not thinking from the divine energy that created that, or created that potential, that doesn't really have a material solidity of any kind. All we need is 9th grade science to know that matter is not solid. We don't believe it.
Feeling the energy today.
One of you commented the divine doesn't care about death because it knows there's no death. There's many stories in the Bible where people get whacked, and supposedly by God. I mean, the Holy Spirit takes out a couple in the New Testament. To even temporarily touch into that space where it knows life just flowed into this form to come play for a little bit. And it fully intended to flow back out of it at some point. So when it does, it's a non-event. Where from our perspective, this is all I got, is from birth to death, and then I'm nothing. And my ego says, oh, I need to hold on, So then we try to put God within that framework of protecting life. And God's like, you're here on my adventure. You don't need to protect anything because I got you. We're going to do this until it's done, and then we're going to leave. No option either way. Okay, so now I'll just go with the flow and enjoy the ride, knowing that at some point, once we can touch that, I have found, and I've seen it in others, once you can touch that, even one time, something changes. And your brain will scream, you're going crazy, and the rest, if you mention it to anybody, the world will tell you you're going crazy, because you can't look at it that way. Yeah, you can. The world would actually become very peaceful very quickly if everybody could look at it that way. Because now it's not a big deal. It's just nicer if we have a house and some food. So here, let's all have a house and some food and have a nice adventure for however long it lasts. Rather than trying to get the most out of it and making it last as long as it can and protecting me. Yeah. So much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
Just integrating all.
myself in bed this morning. I was just laying there and I was like, I am just in the process of loving observation, not forcing anything. If someone stubs their toes, falls on the porch or something, you just, you observe with love.
That's it.
That's it. And then you open yourself up more to receive versus I notice when judgment comes up, I immediately put a wall up between me and the other person, me and the situation, and then I just pile on more gunk within my own wall, my own well of shiz, basically.
Fill it up with garbage.
Right. So release all the walls of judgment, and with that, just lovingly watch, observe, and just drink it in, basically.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have found that it's almost like going to an extreme these days. That I used to have all these paradigms of creation and how that works in consciousness and energy and angels and guides, and now it's just watching. It's like, all right, well, I'm in this mood tonight. There you go, God. Yep, here I am. And it's so much more peaceful, and the moods pass more quickly, more easily. And it's like, really? All we gotta do is just watch?
Yeah.
Which I heard you mention Eckhart Tolle earlier. That's what he would say.
Yep.
Just watch. Who could believe that's a superpower? Because when we're watching, we're letting the Holy Spirit watch with us, and they can do stuff.
I had that phase where I was piling on the spiritual self-development books too.
Yeah.
And that phase was really necessary for me too, to just drink all the information in. And then you had mentioned the process of, following the specific guides and angels and religion and protocols and step-by-step self-development. And then it's like, oh my gosh. And you come to the point where you're just like, you just drink it all in, you're like, okay, I'm just going to watch everything. And then it just comes to you, whatever you just digested through all those years of reading the books.
Right. I think we need that to begin our initial breakout of the personality. Because the personality thinks, I need to know things.
Right.
So we're given a spiritual path where it thinks it's learning stuff, but really all the time the divine is tricking us. And in the little moments between thoughts, it gives us a little bit more awareness. Just because we are doing this practice, so I'm going to sit this way for this long. But it lets us open up in tiny bits at the beginning. But then when we reach that point, I think you're good. Just my own opinion, Anna, but that's where we want to be. Okay, there it is, all going on. And there's cats and ice, and there's Nathans, and there's neighbors, and ice of the other kind. And okay, what am I in that right now? Oh, well, I'm going to go for lunch real quick. It's okay that I can see all that other and yet be totally at peace in my personal experience this moment.
It's really interesting you both talking about that, because yesterday I was certainly contemplating the weird divine action of life unfolding and maybe the divine providence of God. I don't know if that's you sort of like that expression, but of it occurring sometimes with our knowledge and consent, sometimes with no knowledge and just consent, and sometimes without our consent and knowledge, and we're quite ignorant and it just happens anyway. Yeah. And then so in that it kind of happens with us being passive, so just the watching. And then in my case yesterday, I had a day of extreme action where I woke up in the morning and I had no idea that an hour later I'd be packing my bags. and so it's an action that sometimes, so maybe my point was, I would love to get to this stage where I can just be a watcher. But for me, whether it's a case of some sort of spiritual immaturity, I need the environment has to be right for me to be able to do that. and then if it's not right, then you have to make an action
Yeah.
to get to that point where you can then just go, I'm going to watch now. I'm not going
But
to
that's
watch.
part of it. That's the living that we
Yeah,
took on coming into this physical form. So yeah, there's times for actions, but you already made the point that you were woke up contemplative, and an hour later you knew it was time to do an action, and you did it. That's how it works together.
right.
We don't try to get rid of action. We just don't worry if it says, oh, it's all right to be still for 3 weeks. Okay. Because if I need to do something, I'll suddenly feel like I need to do it. Because I'm not observing alone. I'm observing with the divine all the while. And I have given it permission in depth. You can speak up and take over anytime you want, you know?
Yeah.
And so then we're free to float, you know, in observation when that's all that's going on. And we're free to flow with movement action here when that's called for. I see them going to,
Right.
yeah.
You
Oh.
were-
I was just going to say, I certainly, again, maybe this is my spiritual immaturity. I didn't feel that I was observing yesterday. You know, I just felt I was having an out of body experience, and it was all just like.
Because you've defined a certain space as observing. And it's not even that. That's where Barb was saying mindfulness continues to grow, awareness deepens. You learn that once you've shifted your identity in most part to I am this divine being, this self of God, I can safely go about my day without consciously going to that particular space, knowing it has me. So you were observing
Yeah.
yesterday morning, but not from that particular space. But suddenly the feeling came up in you, oh, time to get out of here, or however that was for you, and you just said yes to it. And what at first is so much practice and carefulness to be contemplative or to be peaceful just becomes part of trusting ourselves through and through. I know that's running the show now. So if I suddenly come running out here and scream, silence! Because nobody will shut up and come to prayer. All right, guess that's what was called for. You know, I don't need to check every energy that comes up in me by comparing it to that space that I've idealized.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you come out in different ways at different times. But you were saying, you were talking about how over time this sense of the divine taking over, it grows, it gets more and more. And then Lorraine said, my favorite word, consent. I think all the divine energy, consciousness, whatever the intention, whatever you want to call it, whatever that is, all it's looking for is us to say yes, to have that, to give consent. And it will, it'll take over our lives and give us so much more than we could ever want.
And even there, I'm going to just play a moment off of that, because our idea of the divine, we still tend to make it something separate from us.
Right.
And that's also grows a different model. And if we go back to the old drop in the ocean analogy that a lot of teachers have used, but if you think about it, if I'm a drop of the divine consciousness, just one tiny drop out of this infinite universe, I'm still with it, in it, So it is not taking over me. I'm simply letting my drop of the divine take over my animal. It's me and God, always, because
Mhm.
I am God's beloved. So it's our animal that does not want somebody telling it what to do. And that's where the time is needed in our path as we slowly, what's called surrender, but we're not giving up anything, actually. We're just turning to our own connection, where our drop is in the huge, turning to there as myself to listen and to guide my animal. And I just have found there's a deeper, more loving peace that grows as I understand that somehow. These words don't even feel good as I'm saying them, but it's the best I can come up with. But when I soak in that space now, it's not God telling me what to do. It's me connected to God, acting the way God acts, being me. Something like that.
Yeah.
So it gets more and more pleasant. So, you know, I no longer feel like God is giving me commands. It's what does the God self He made me to be want to do in godly manner.
Yeah.
That's its manner. That's my manner. That's the one.
I used to think, relating with all three, what you said, you know, our body, our true self is like a computer with outdated systems and beliefs. But now I'm thinking we all have a little puppy within us that we have to train. And when you say consent, it's like without the awareness and the mindfulness, you just let other people's thoughts, believe. It's like a traffic jam. You just let it flow. If it's someone's anger, someone's depression, you're feeling angry, you're picking up something in the environment, you're just letting it all basically cloud your true self. And that's when your consent comes in. You're like, wait a second, puppy, wait, no, stop. That's not my thoughts. This isn't my true self.
Yeah.
And then you stop that immediately and you fill it in with either the awareness, the empty mindfulness, the loving observance, or you change that with a different thought or belief. So I used to think it was a computer, but now I'm thinking we all have this little inner puppy that we have to like just snap. Stop it.
That's it. Yeah.
Did you read that book already?
Not yet, but I'm getting the idea.
I used to teach it as, I think of my animal as my pet beagle.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's fine to let it go run and play.
Right, yeah.
But there's other days you call it back and you say, no, we're not going to go chase rabbits right now. You know.
Mine's a bull, by the way.
So, but anyway, I like the puppy.
Cute.
Yes. A bull.
An English bulldog.
Yeah.
Barb, what's yours?
Yeah.
Your inner puppy.
My inner puppy.
Right to
It would have to be a chihuahua. It would have to be a long enough.
Cool. You started to say something else in there too, Barb. We interrupted you. Never mind.
Must be okay.
Okay. So, yeah, it's an amazing adventure, I think. It's the only thing that has stayed constant for me over all these years. I mean, other things came and went, raising a family, being a programmer, running a retreat center, but just the amazing nature of this adventure of awakening. Still just as exciting as it was at 30 when I consciously started my search. Yeah, so I hope you all enjoy it just as much, because even when you're screaming and this is friggin' wonderful, I can tell.
It makes the challenges then rewarding. And when you're not live streaming anymore, I like talking about something.
All right, we will go off. Bye.
Yeah.